Welcome to MMAPlay365, I'm Newsome and I'm back again to give you a Bays AI recap from last weekend's UFC event from our UFC prediction software at UFC Vegas 77. Overall, a really good event by Bays AI from a straight pick prediction accuracy. It hit 77%, 10 correct predictions out of 13. And weirdly, this is the second event in a row that it's hit 10 out of 13. So 2 consecutive events at 77%. So really happy with that straight pick prediction accuracy. The one thing I will say though, and it's going to be a shorter version of the recap podcast, and the reason being is that 12 out of 13 favourites won on the night, which is a long time since I've personally seen that happen. Normally you get 3 or 4 underdogs on an event, but it wasn't until the main event that an underdog won. So for the first 12 fights, every favourite won. And what that meant from the AI's perspective is that there wasn't always going to be a ton of value when that many favourites win. And what I mean by value is value when you're looking at the odds implied compared to the actual bookies odds. So what this recap's going to be more about from a fun gambler's perspective. So if you're somebody that does just look to lay 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 leg parlays and you're using the AI to do that and you're not too fussed about value, you're more about just picking winners just to get that big betting slip, then the last event last weekend was the perfect event for you and that type of gambler. It wasn't as great for a gambler who is looking for what Bays AI is given as a percentage, the odds implied from that percentage, and then trying to find value on bookies against that odds implied and the probability that Bays AI is given. So yeah, for this or last event, it was definitely more one for the fun gamblers, and we'll go through some of the percentages. And of course there is one value side in regards to the underdog, and that's the one that we're going to start with. It was the main event, Mayra Bueno Silva versus Holm. Bays AI had Mayra Bueno Silva to win at 60%. Of course, Mayra Bueno Silva was an underdog, and Bays AI favoured her to win, and you would have got value on that money line of Mayra Bueno Silva when you were comparing that 60% to the odds implied to the bookies odds. But also you can go one step further, because Mayra Bueno Silva to win inside the distance, to win by finish, whichever way you want to put it, what you're doing here is you're adding the KO and TKO and submission percentages together from Bays AI to get your overall inside the distance or to win by finish percentage. Mayra Bueno Silva was 44% to win inside the distance. So again, that's a high number for an underdog. There was value there on the bookies as well if you decided to play inside the distance. And now finally we go into the submission. So we go one step further for Mayra Bueno Silva. Of course, she did win by submission. It was in round 2. Ninja choke. 38% to win by submission. So again, it's a very high number for a specific method of victory for an underdog. And to be fair, when you're looking at the money line to inside the distance, to submission, to that specific method of victory, they are all lined the percentages are pretty well spaced out, if that makes sense, where they should be. And I feel like, again, depending on what type of gambler you are and what type of risk you wanted to take on the fight, any of those would have hit. Look, Silva is a submission specialist. She did win inside the distance, and she won the fight outright as well. So whichever way you wanted to take the fight, whether you wanted to mitigate some risk and just take the money line, have a little bit more risk and take inside the distance, or just go all out there for that big ticket, then all 3 of them would have pulled in. So yeah, that's a really good fight from the value perspective. It was the only underdog that won of the night. It was also, or Mayra Bueno Silva was also the dog of the week inside the Bays AI section of the dog of the week package on MMAPlay365. The dog of the week's just $1.99. You get the best underdog from Bays AI. You get my favourite underdog personally, and if both of them lose, we give you your money back. So it's not too much risk at all, and especially with it being $1.99. But Mayra Bueno Silva was the Bays AI dog of the week inside that package this week, and the only underdog to win on the entire event. So well picked out by Bays for sure. And now, like I said, we're just going to fire through the winners really quickly just to outline where Bays AI had those winners. Like I said, there wasn't too much value in most of these from the long-term gambler's perspective, someone that is trying to beat the bookies long-term, get that closing line value, beat the bookies odds with the odds implied percentages that Bays AI is given. However, it was definitely a good event for those fun gamblers that just like to string those long parlays together. So the first one, we've got Ailin Perez versus Ashlee Evans-Smith. Perez to win, Bayes AI had at 57%. Next up, Azat Maksum versus Tyson Nam. This was a close fight, a really close fight. And actually, the one thing I like about this prediction, because Maksum to win from Bayes AI was 54%. Maksum was like a -400, -450 favourite. And Bayes AI thought the fight was going to be much closer than the odds suggested, and it played out that way. It was a split decision, and that's reflective of a 54%. So although there wasn't any value on the line from a betting perspective, or value from the percentage when you're looking at the betting lines from a betting perspective, what Bayes AI did do is predict a very close fight when the odds were saying it's absolutely not going to be close, and it's not going to be close, and it's not going to be a shutout. And to be honest with you, another smart way of using Bayes AI could be using Bayes AI to pass on a fight. So if you were thinking of betting at Maksum at -400 and you saw that Bayes AI is giving him at 54%, indicating that it's going to be closer to a coin flip, that might be a good indication for you to say, okay, well, I'm going to take Bayes AI's percentage and just pass on the fight because it's going to be much closer than what the bookies are saying, and that's exactly how it played out. Next fight, Evan Elder versus Genaro Valdez. Elder to win, 51%. So again, a correct prediction from Bayes AI. Elder, of course, did win. Not too much value or no value from that 51% when you're comparing it to the odds at the bookies. Next up, we've got Della Maddalena versus Bassil Hafez. Maddalena to win, 64%. Of course, he did. Short notice. Again, close fight. And again, Bayes AI saying that the fight, even though 64% is a relatively confident percentage, Bayes AI was saying that the fight is going to be much, much closer than the bookie suggested. And again, split decision. That's how it played out. Next fight, Viktoriia Dudakova versus Istela Nunes. Dudakova to win, 67%. Confident. But to be fair, we didn't really get to see it play out. That was the fight where there was the dislocated elbow. Thank God it was a dislocation and not a break. But yeah, Dudakova, the fight was over shortly after it started. From the takedown, Nunes posted up on her arm, bent her arm the opposite way. Devastating screams, fight was over. But again, if you'd use Bayes AI's predictions and you put Dudakova in a parlay, regardless of what's happened in the fight, you've got that win on that parlay leg, or the win in general, depending on, if you just wanted to bet Dudakova straight. She did end up closing under -200. So yeah, a good prediction from Bayes AI. Next up, Melsik Baghdasaryan versus Lutz. Baghdasaryan to win, 51%, a correct prediction. But again, there wasn't any value from that 51% when you're looking at Baghdasaryan on the bookies' odds. However, it was a close fight, and Baghdasaryan did end up pulling away right at the end, edging that final round. But once again, Bayes AI stating that the fight is going to be closer than what the bookies are suggesting. So once again, a correct prediction, and with how the fight played out as well, because it was close and there was an argument for Lutz to win the fight, although I personally didn't think he did. It was a close fight and Bayes AI knew. Next up, we've got Francisco Prado versus Ottman Azaitar. Now, Prado to win was 53.65%, and the reason I'm saying the 0.65 and I'm not rounding up and down like I normally do for the sake of this recap podcast is because his inside the distance, which you add your knockout, TKO, and submission together, because Prado does have some submissions as well, so I get some people might really have liked the inside the distance, but when you look at inside the distance, it's 53.59, so there's only a 0.6 difference between the Prado outright win and Prado inside the distance. So if you're looking, and there was value on all of this, by the way, at the bookies, for sure. So if you were looking at which way to bet Prado, you'd have absolutely gone inside the distance, because Bayes AI had the decision at such a minute percentage, like I said, 0.6%, and inside the distance you'd have just got a much better line. Of course, Prado knocked Azaitar out in round one. You get your KO TKO at 29% as well. So if you didn't want the submission, you just wanted to go for the knockout, then again, that's there for you. All three of these would have cashed a ticket. All three of these had value on the bookies' odds as well. And also, actually, really quickly looking at Prado to win by KO TKO in round one, that was 25% as well. So there was actually only 4% difference between the KO outright and the KO in round one. So it was a shutout really from Bayes AI, because from every angle of the fight. Prado to win outright, Prado to win inside the distance or by finish, Prado to win by KO TKO, Prado to win by KO TKO in round 1. All had value, all happened. And although Prado wasn't an underdog, the lines were very, very close to a pick'em. So really good value across the board and a complete gem prediction from Base AI as well. Next fight, we've got Norma Dumont versus Chelsea Chandler. Dumont to win 55%. Dumont wasn't a massive favourite in this fight. There wasn't too much value on the 55%, but again, it would have been a really good parlay piece because it's not as if she was like minus 300, minus 400. You know, she was in and around that minus 150, minus 160. And even though 55% is a correct prediction, it is a bit of a coin flip. So again, it's probably more one of those bets for a fun gambler to throw in. And like I said, if you've got a 10-11 leg parlay, for example, which, you know, is definitely the version of a fun gambler, then a minus 150, minus 160 is going to really boost that parlay. So yeah, 55%, job well done by Bays. And we move on to the final one where we've got JunYong Park versus Albert Duraev. Park to win, Base AI had at 58%, and of course he did. Bit of a slow start, but eventually got there and got the finish in the second round. And once again, when you look at the odds, Park was around minus 150, and at 58%, it's not quite there from a value perspective. But again, like I just said with Dumont, you throw a fighter at minus 150 in a big parlay, or you throw a couple of them in, and suddenly that parlay starts to become very lucrative. So yeah, another good prediction from Base AI. That's all we've got for this episode of the recap. Like I said, we can't really dig too much into the value side just because so many favourites won. So although Base AI did a good job at the straight pick prediction accuracy, there wasn't too much value. There was some value here and there, which, you know, I have spoken about and recapped, but there wasn't too much of it. So another good event from Base. It just had a different twist and a different spin for UFC Vegas 77, and I'm looking forward to the 15 fight card that we've got at UFC London to see where Base AI is at with that event. And of course, I'll be recapping that again next week as well. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I'm Newsome, and I'll see you again next time.